I know lots of people are struggling, or do struggle, to stick to their goals. Is it my way of proving to my brain that I'm not good enough because that's what I think of myself? And yeah, it can massively be a self-sabotage tool. And most people don't know this, although I've told you, many times, abuse is addictive. Now, just because you don't necessarily see that you've been in an abusive relationship, abuse can be various different ways, and abuse can be a really strong term sometimes, and it sounds a very strong term, but even if you don't feel like you've been in an abusive relationship, a relationship will always changes you. Not necessarily for negative, it always changes you in any way, positively, neutrally, it just changes you. You grow, you learn, you adapt, and you compromise when you get into a relationship, or you're supposed to compromise when you get in a relationship. You take the other person's opinion on board. You do things that that's not what you do if you're on your own. I know lots of people I speak to, they've never been single, or they certainly weren't single for very long, which means they've always been compromising their whole life. So now you're potentially in a situation where you are single, or you're not compromising yourself, you're actually just living for you. The abuse that you used to receive, and I don't mean necessarily really, physical or mental and emotional, it necessarily doesn't have to be hardcore. It just means that life over its toll, and relationships over their toll of your lifespan, have just all kind of slowly added up. Because necessarily you don't have to have that killer punch, that really abusive relationship to feel this way. Things can just kind of creep up on you. And sometimes that's almost worse because you don't realise that that's happened. You haven't had the alarm bell going off. A lot of clients that I work with who've had emotional abuse, it's only when the physical abuse came in did they say, no, that's enough. Whereas they've took 10 years of emotional abuse before that alarm bell was rung, when they were hit in the face or smacked around the head or thrown against the wall or whatever it was for them that decided for them that they were going to walk away. But even in people who are in that emotional abuse place, even if you don't class the relationship you've been in as emotional abuse, you've been compromising yourself. Because everyone, as soon as you get in a relationship, you don't just do what you want. You change the TV channel, you think about what the other person wants for tea, especially if you live together, you compromise, you change. This is where your relationship will move. And it adds up in your lifespan. It necessarily isn't like a drastic thing that happens, bang, and you're suddenly like, oh, I'm so fucked up. It can be such a gradual thing. And you just slowly lose who you are, what you wanted, what is actually you, what did you want to do. And then abuse, once that's removed from your life, once you now become completely independent, and although lots of people think they're independent, they're not, because their thoughts are not independent. You may well be a mum who's strong and on their own and manage their kids and run your own business and do all these things, but your thoughts are not independent. They're still governed by other people's opinion. Therefore, you're not independent at all. You might tell yourself you're a strong, independent person, and you may well be strong. You may well act independent, but your brain and your thought patterns are not independent because they're still governed by what other people think, or what you think other people think. This is the biggest one. What you think other people think. It's not like someone's verbally told you, this is what I think of you. People make up what they think people think of them, and then live their life on that belief that, oh, well, this person thinks I'm this person will think that I do that. They never said that. They never even acted like that, but people make that belief up, what they think people think of them, and then they live with that. And that, what I call, is replacing the abuse you've had. As I said, abuse is addictive. So even if you've been in a relationship which is not necessarily abusive, there's just been, you compromise yourself. You've just slowly, your identity's just not what you were before. Not who you are before that relationship, before children, before all this stuff. And then you're out of the relationship, and now you're lost, because who else is going to abuse you? Who else is going to put you down? Who else is going to sabotage you? Who else is going to hold you back? Because you need to meet them beliefs that you've now got. You've got that belief system now that needs to be fulfilled. Your belief system needs to be fulfilled, because so your brain will go and find that. So you go and find those answers for yourself. You go and find those things and torture yourself. It becomes self-harm. People call it self-sabotage. I call it self-harm. It's self-harm. You are literally putting the words in your head are yours, but whether you master them as somebody else's, whether it's your ex in your ear saying you weren't good enough, see, I told you never be this, or whether it's just your own voice saying, see, I told you you're no good. That's self-harm, that's self-sabotage, and that's not independency. That's not thinking on your own, that's not being yourself. And this is where most people get lost in this, and this takes some awareness to really be like, fuck, and I see all the comments going, oh wow, this is me, oh my God, you're in my head. Now this is fine. Most people just are not prepared to look at it And you don't know, and this is the big thing I always say to people, hey, when people start, getting into stuff in conversations, like with me, coaching conversations, you're not supposed to know this stuff, right? As I said, I think on one of my lives the other day with my whiteboard, like, we don't teach this at school. They don't teach this at school, they don't teach this at university. There's no life, there's no school of life, there's no school of relationships, there's no school of mindset. And if we spent the same amount of time, as I said, if we spent the same time, money and effort on ourselves, on our mindset, on our relationship, on our education, we would be different people if we spent the same amount of money we do on our vocations, because people spend fucking god sums of money on courses, qualifications, university. The schooling system costs billions of pounds. But seriously, how much time and effort have you actually spent learning about this stuff? So don't beat yourself up that these things are not the case. It's about awareness, about, fuck, there are serious things that I never thought I needed to know. Who knows you need to know this stuff? Who knows this stuff even exists? Until suddenly, this is why people book breakthrough calls with me, and they kind of like sit on the fence, they and ah, they book one, and they're like, fuck, because it just unravels right in front of them, their own life, and it's all personalised, and then it unravels. And I say unravels, not in a bad way, it's not a bad thing. You just literally like getting a big fucking floodlight at a football fucking stadium and turning it onto your life and into your brain of why you do the things you do, and why is this all relevant to you, and how you could have changed your relationships. And it's about looking at that. If there's a problem in your relationship, if things have happened, it's not necessarily there's a problem with you or them. But obviously them choosing to do that negative action means there is a problem with them, to mean they want to hurt someone that they say they care about in that way, is my opinion. But this is about being aware. Like, what did I do? How did I contribute? Like, not in a blame way, not in a, woe is me, but like, how can I learn to be better for myself? How can I communicate with myself better? Why do I do this? Why do I choose people who want to meet their needs in that way? What needs are my important needs? What am I doing? What's my energy? What am I, masculine? Am I feminine? How do I respond in anger? How do I respond in frustration? How do I respond in emotion? How could I annoy people? How could I frustrate people? How can my message get lost? How can I improve that with the next person I get in a relationship with? No one does this. No one analyzes this. Or not many people do. And they get themselves into the same situation over and over and over again. But whether this is in a relationship or with their children, when it's discipline and parenting, there's so many things this is applicable to. It's just about raising that level of awareness in yourself and then learning how to action it and implement it. And that's the thing, implementing and actioning it is one of the most important things. You can't deal with an issue you don't know that's there. And obviously lots of people come with one issue and it turns out it's actually something very deep rooted, it's very, very different. And then people wonder why they spend their whole life figuring out how to fix this. A lot of people don't see this. Mental health and even relationship health and everything in terms of that way is exactly the same. If you treat the symptoms, you'll never get better. Whereas if you treat the cause, you will actually find true happiness and fulfillment and freedom. Because ultimately we want to be free, and we truly want to be independent. We want to be independent of our thoughts. We want to be the owner of our own minds. We want to be in control of our own mind. Lots of people say I want to get to the gym or want to lose weight, but it's looking for the why. And not just because I want to feel better, it's really finding out what it is, looking for the why, and finding that why and building on the why. Because as I said yesterday, the why is the limbic system, is the feelings of the brain that goes out to the neocortex of the brain, the Homo sapien part of the brain, which is logical. Logically, you want to look better, you want to feel better, you want to look more attractive to the ideal sex, but your inner why, the real reason, your vision, your mission, your dream, as I said, Martin Luther King's speech was not, I have a plan, it's, I have a dream, I have a vision. And it was an empowering speech for that exact reason. He didn't come out with the features and benefits spiel. He came out with something that meant something to him, which then obviously influenced other people because they believed in the vision, they believed in the dream, and then they all went the same way, which is the same thing. If you live with passion and you live with conviction because you actually believe your why, because it's so great that you have to get that in your life. As I always say, if you want to get to the island, burn the boats, which means you have to learn to swim. You have to learn to swim because there's no other option for you. When you give yourself a way out, when you let yourself have reasons and excuses, you'll then let yourself have reasons and excuses. If you don't accept that for yourself, if you raise your own standards of what you will and won't tolerate in your own life, if you raise that up, there is no falling short. There is no falling short because you'll just keep going and repeating until you get to where you want to go. There is no end. And this is where I talk about infinite versus finite games. And I'm going to just spiel on this right now. A finite game, for example, I know maybe you're not a football fans, but a finite game, 90 minutes of football plus, plus injury time, 90 minutes of football. Both teams agree the rules. All the players, there's a set amount of players, there's set rules they all agree to, and there's a set time limit of when it ends. At the end of 90 minutes, you don't get one team saying, oh, if we only had 15 more minutes, we could get those goals back and win. It doesn't work like that. It's a finite game. You measure it on this, and it's a finite game. There's a start and there's a finish, and there's an agreed set of processes. An infinite game, for example, business. There's known and there's unknown players in business. Also, the rules of business. There are no rules. We didn't all agree to the rules of business. We just set up our businesses and started. So there's known and there's unknown players. There's rules that we haven't agreed to them. And the game. When does the game of business stop? It doesn't. The game of business just rolls on. It's just infinity. It just keeps going and going and going. There's no set rules. There's no set winner or loser. There's no winner in business. You can't do that. Whereas in a finite game, for example, football, it ends. And this is the difference when I say about destinations versus journeys, because life is an infinite game. The only time it ever stops is when the other side gives up the will or the resources to continue to play the game. And obviously in business, for example, if a company loses the will or the resources, or they get bought up by another company, or they go bust, they lose the will and the resources to continue to play. How this is relevant to you right now in your lives. Life is an infinite game. And I say game in the way of that's a concept. The finite and infinite games is a concept. Life's not necessarily a game, it's real life. But it's something that keeps on going. There is no end until obviously you were to pass. But when you pass, you just pass to your children, and then your children pass down. Your children treat themselves how you treat yourself. That's 100% true. And we all know they do model. We know they model your behaviour. And we obviously don't treat our children like we treat ourselves. But we all know how many times we may have made a comment about our own bodies in front of our children. They will take that, and they will know that you pick on yourself. You put yourself down in body shame. And then you don't want them to body shame themselves, but you body shame yourself. Why is it any different for a child to treat themselves different to how you treat yourself? And this is all where it all comes into this massive web. And this is why, I can spend hours talking about this, and why clients, go on and have so many different angles of coaching with me, because it's such a infinite thing. There's so many infinite possibilities, because life is never ending and the journey continues to go until you lose the will or the resources to continue to play. Life's an infinite game, and we have our children to look after and look for and look after. And this is why it's so important. It's so important for us to get all these concepts so we don't influence them in a way that we don't want to. So why would we treat ourselves any different to how we treat our children and how we want our children to treat each other and themselves? And that's when you're looking at reasons why you do things and why you should change and why you should build your why up to influence everyone else. That's the reason. That's an easy reason to find. It's layering on that reason, because you need to be your best self. As I always say, self, team, task. You need to be your best self to make sure your team is okay, which is your family in this case, and your team then execute the task. And the task, wherever it may be, you cannot do the task if your team are not good, and you cannot do the team if you're not good, if you're not good. And this is something obviously I've expressed many times, comes from my fire service days. If you're not okay, physically, mentally, emotionally, in terms of yourself, or in terms of your own BA set before you're about to walk into a fire, you can't look after your team member. You can't look after your BA team member. You can't look after him, her. If you can't look after them, you can't save the child inside that's hanging out the window. You're no good to that child. You're no good to that family who are trapped. If your team is not okay, as in your BA team, and you cannot look after your BA member and your team member and do the job if you're not okay, physically or equipment wise or any other thing. It's very important to remember self, team, task. This is something that really resonates. Again, most of you have been on an aeroplane, especially the ones who came on my Spanish Mouncation. What do they say on the safety announcement? If there is a problem in the air, the oxygen mask will fall from the overhead locker. Pull sharply down to start the oxygen. Please, if you're traveling with anyone else, infants or children, please put on your own mask first before helping others. Why? Because you're no good to anyone else if you are not okay. Self, team, task. It's the same everywhere. We just don't have this concept reaffirmed. So many people say, I spend all my time on my children. I spend all my energy on my children. I do everything for my children. I'm like, great, but that is spending zero time on yourself is actually completely contradicting you spending all your time and energy and being the best person you can be for your children. Because to be the best mum you can be for your children so they grow up to have independence and to be responsible for their own actions and to know it's okay to look after and love themselves, You need to do that stuff. You need to have a break. You need to be your best self. You need to be able to have me time. It's important that you show them that these things are important to have. Self-team tasks, self-love is so important, and it's important in your children. Like, it's important for you to love yourself, for relationships, but also for your children. You would not want your children to treat themselves how you treat yourself. And that is something that's really, really poignant, really, really key, and something we should all take a massive, long think and think, shit, yeah, they are going to be like that if I don't make different changes in my life.